Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Maestrovskaya, and I'm a digital publishing librarian at the University of Toronto Libraries. I'm speaking today from Ontario, Canada, and I'm on the unceded land of the Algonquin, Anishinaabewake, and Haudenosaunee peoples. I'm here today in my capacity as the chair of the PKP Accessibility Interest Group, and I will talk about accessibility in open journal systems and in content published on it and beyond. But first, I'll start by saying a few words about the PKP Accessibility Interest Group. PKP stands for the Public Knowledge Project, which many of you know as the initiative behind open source publishing platforms that include open journal systems, open monograph press, and open preprint systems. Open Journal Systems, or OJS, was first released in 2001 and has since become the most widely used open source journal publishing platform in existence, with over 25,000 journals using it worldwide. My institution, the University of Toronto, is one of the active users, offering OJS hosting to over 50 faculty and student journals. Like all successful open source software projects, PKP relies heavily on its community contributors, and the Accessibility Interest Group is one of such community structures. It was formed in the spring of 2020, but its idea was first conceived at a development sprint at the Library Publishing Forum in 2019. At that sprint, a group of library publishers inspired by usability and accessibility improvements in OJS 3.0 joined forces to draft a roadmap to help guide PKP towards further compliance with web accessibility standards. The AIG goals are to keep stakeholders updated on the accessibility work done and planned at PKP, solicit and direct community contributions towards PKP efforts through testing and documentation, educate the community through documentation and resources, and advocate for change. The time was right for this group, as PKP was actively working on web accessibility improvements in the newest release of OJS, but it was not well known to the public. And there was growing interest from institutions like my own that were under provincial deadlines for meeting web accessibility standards in its web spaces, and of course wanted to make its publishing options as barrier-free as possible. I will say more about the group's work throughout this presentation, but as an example of some of the projects, there were a few communication pieces put out to update the community on ongoing accessibility work. The group helped with recruitment of assistive technology users for UX testing, and also contributed to alt text remediation in the OJS documentation. As the documentation relies heavily on screenshots, there were a lot of images in need of alt text. But for now, I want to briefly touch on the accessibility of OJS as a platform. I mentioned ongoing PKP efforts in this area that started with OJS 3.0. They were followed by an accessibility audit done by an external vendor on the public OJS interface. The evaluation included a combination of automated tests and manual assessment done by people with distinct technologies and disabilities. Accessibility issues outlined in the audit report and completed tickets can be viewed publicly in the PKP Accessibility GitHub project. PKP focused its remediation efforts on the default theme, and the 3.3 release features the first accessible default theme. If you're not currently on OJS 3.3, this will be a good reason to upgrade. The theme is also accompanied with an accessibility statement that has been translated into French, Spanish, and Portuguese. We always welcome volunteer translations to other languages from those interested. Next on the PKP roadmap is improvements to the manuscript submission wizard that is being redesigned for usability and accessibility. You can view the mockups and discussion in the GitHub issue I have on the slide. This work is scheduled for the 3.4 release. This is all great, but of course the bread and butter of OJS is the content published on it. And that content would not be made automatically accessible by improvements to the platform, since it is created outside of it and more often than not in PDF, which is not a very accessible format. So can we do anything to improve accessibility of that published content? This topic has been the other big part of the accessibility interest group's work. Helping editors, authors, and publishers move towards accessible published content through resources and documentation is one of the group's goals. Last year, we published Creating Accessible Content, a guide for editors and authors. This is a hands-on guide that walks through techniques for creating accessible documents that can be used regardless of the platform or application. It also has a section that compares different publishing formats in terms of accessibility and links to resources specific to each format. You're welcome to share this guide with the editors you work with. Just like all PKP guides, this is a work in progress, and we're happy to receive feedback that will allow us to update this guide further. Based on this guide, we put together an outline for a PKP school course on accessibility for editors. The idea was to create practical guidance, but also to stimulate discussion about how such guidelines could be incorporated into journal policies and workflows. That work is currently on hold due to some staffing changes in PKP school, but we hope to take these materials and convert them into a workshop. I did a workshop like that at a small scale for editors of the journals we host at the University of Toronto, and found that it generated productive discussion and was generally welcomed by the editors. If any of you are thinking of doing something like that, I will be happy to share my materials. In conclusion, I wanted to say that this work is an example of what can be achieved by a group of passionate individuals when they choose to organize and address product-based and content-based accessibility concerns as a community. I would like to thank all current and past AIG members and PKP for welcoming this initiative and invite you to consider joining the group. You can email me directly if you're interested. Thank you.